Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to make your first app in the C# language using the Xamarin platform. In the previous video I went through how to download and install Xamarin platform on your computer so that you can start coding in the C# language and making your own native apps for both iOS and Android. In this video I'm going to run through some basic things about C#, and I'm going to show you some of the things in the Xamarin Studio, which we'll be using to write our code in. And then I'll show you a few little resources that you can use. Okay, so just before we get started, I'll show you this resource, which is on CodeMahal website. So if you go to tutorials and then mobile app development and then Xamarin and C#, there is a link to the C# code reference for Xamarin. So on this page, you'll find heaps of information on C# data types, variables, operators, conditional statements, loops, methods, and so on. So it's still growing. And basically, if there's anything about the code you're not sure about, or the syntax of the code, then head over to this page, and there's lots of sample code on here that you can have a look at to help you get started. Also, there's a link to the Xamarin frequently asked questions and tips page. So if you run into any problems or you've got questions, head over there and your questions might be answered, hopefully. Okay, so to get started, we'll load up the Xamarin Studio. So if you successfully installed Xamarin following the instructions in the previous tutorial, then if you go to your Launchpad on a Mac, or all programs on the Start menu on Windows, you should see the Xamarin Studio icon. So click on that, and Xamarin Studio should launch. Okay, here we go. So this is the main screen that you'll see when you open up the program. And Xamarin Studio Community is the free version of Xamarin Studio. You can use it for free. You can make your own apps for iOS, for Android, Mac, Windows if you're on a PC. So this is it. On the left-hand side, you'll see a list of all the projects that you're currently working on. So I've got 2 projects there that I'm working on. And also you'll see a button there, New Solution, which you can click on to start a new project. You can also click on Open if you want to open a project that's stored somewhere else and isn't in your main projects folder. Now, by the way, your projects folder, if you're on a Mac, depending on how you installed and set up your the installation of Xamarin, if you go to your home folder, you should see a folder there called Projects, and all of your projects should be stored in there. But you can change where that's stored, and you might set that up differently. Anyway, to get started, we're going to create a little program, not for iOS or Android, just that will run on this computer, and just to learn the basics of the C# language. So in the Xamarin Studio, you firstly, to start a new project, you need to create a solution. So we'll click on New Solution. And you'll see that there's different templates that you can start with. So if you go to cross-platform and then app, you can use Xamarin.Forms to make a cross-platform app. You can click on iOS app, and there's different options there for starting a new iOS app project. Same with Android, and same with Mac. And you might see Windows if you're on a PC. I'm going to click on .NET under Other though, so we won't make a mobile app straight away. We'll start by learning basics of the C# programming language by making a console project. So click on .NET under Other, and then Console Project, and then make sure you've got C# selected as the programming language. And this will create a new C# console project where we can just start learning the code, syntax, and practicing that way. Okay, if you're pretty familiar with C#, then you can skip this and go head forward to the tutorials on making your first mobile app. Okay, but click on Next, and then you need to give your project a name. So I'm going to call this My C# App, Okay, and the solution name will be the same. And so this is where you choose the location to store your project. So you can see it's in my home folder and then in the projects folder. But if you want to store your project somewhere else, like maybe on an external hard drive, then click on Browse and pick a different location for it, or if there's any other folder on your computer that you want to store it in. Okay, so make sure that that option's checked, create a project within the solution directory, and we don't need to tick anything else there. Okay, so then we can just click on Create. And that will create a new solution. So next time you open Xamarin Studio, you'll notice that the solution is in that list there, solution and projects, and you can click on it to open it. But if you also go to your projects folder, you'll see now that there's a folder in there. Okay, and within that, there's a few different folders and files, which you'll see there's within the solution folder, there's a project folder, which is the same name. And inside that, there's some other folders as well. Okay, so if we just go back into the Xamarin Studio program, the first thing that opens is this file here, program.cs. And CS stands for C#, which is the programming language we're going to be using to make our apps in. Okay, so inside of a solution, you can have multiple projects. So if we head up this this list here, this is the solution. It's called My C# App. This is a project here, which is also called My C# App, but you can have multiple projects inside this solution. Okay, inside of a project, you'll have a references folder with certain namespaces that we'll be using. One there is called System. I'll go through namespaces in just a moment. Okay. Then we have a folder called Packages, where you can add different packages that you might need to use in your project. There's a folder called Properties, which contains a C# file that has it includes assembly information, so we don't really need to touch that at the moment. And then you have your main file. Okay, so that's your actual code there, program.cs, and we can have multiple C# files in here, but this is the main one that main one that we get when we start a new solution. Okay, so let's have a look at the actual code in this program.c# file. Okay, on line 1 we see using system. Okay, and what this does is it tells this file program.cs that we will be using the system namespace. Okay, so we need to use the system namespace in this project, and you'll always see that when you start a new file, you should always see using system. Okay, so basically this section of the code lists the libraries that this file will be using. So usually using system is there by default. Quite often though, you'll need to add more libraries, and you'll need to, if you need to use more libraries, then you put that in this section of the code here, and you say which libraries you're using. Okay, so we're using system, or the system namespace, and namespaces are used a lot in C#, and they're used to organize the many different classes that we have. So we've got a class here called main class, and that is inside a namespace called my C# app. Sorry. Okay, so namespaces make it easy to keep a set of class names separate from another set of class names. And the class names that are declared in one namespace, they won't conflict with the same class names that might be declared in another namespace somewhere else in your program. So when you create a new solution in Xamarin, the namespace on your code or in your code will normally be the same name as the actual solution. Okay, so here we have a namespace called My C# App, and this namespace will contain different classes. At the moment, it contains one class called main class. Okay, so all scripts or all C# files contain a class that is named after the actual script. So for example, if the script file is called calculator.cs or calculator.c#, then the main class will be called calculator. Okay, so you'll see class calculator. So it's important just to remember don't put any spaces in your file names or namespace names or class names. They should never contain spaces. You can use uppercase or lowercase letters, but don't use any spaces. Okay. So this also this line here, namespace my C# app, and then the first line here of a class. So we've got a class being declared here. That doesn't really get touched much, so you don't really need to change anything there. You won't need to change anything there at the moment. Okay, so all of the code that exists between this bracket here and this bracket here, so these two curly brackets, that's all part of the my C# app namespace, which is going to contain different classes. And then here we have the main class, and all of the code within this bracket and this bracket belongs inside that main class. Okay, so we have different brackets to contain namespaces and classes. Okay, so all of the code will go in between those the opening and closing brackets. Okay, and the code that goes inside of the brackets of the class or of a class is what makes up the script. So all of your code goes inside there, and you might have multiple classes in a file, multiple classes in a project. All of your code goes inside the classes. Okay. You'll also see that at the end of different statements there's a semicolon. So every statement in C# on a line ends with a semicolon. All right, that's important to remember. Okay, so we've got a namespace called my C# app, and inside that we have a class called main class. All right, and this program is using the system namespace as well. All right, so that's basically the start, what we need to know. Okay, now we have here a new method. So this is called a method. All right, and it says public static void main. And then inside brackets, we have string, and then these little square brackets, and then args. All right, what this means is that we're creating a new method called main. All right, so it's a new method called main, and a method is just a function that, like this piece of code will do a specific thing or complete a specific task. All right, and the main method always executes as soon as the app runs. So this will begin running this code as soon as the app runs. Okay, and it has to be a public static void, and it's going to receive a string, or it's going to receive an array of strings. Sorry, this is a string array. Okay, so this can change what you have here when you create a new method. It might not say static, it might not say void, but this is what we'll be starting with in this project, and we'll go into that in more detail when we create different methods later on. Okay, but that's what we have at the moment. Then you'll see you've already got some code here called console.writeLine, and then in brackets and in quotation mark or quotes it says hello world. All right, and that's basically our first program. So what console.writeLine does is basically it will write a line, a string to the console. So a little message will be written to the console. So this part that's orange and inside quotes is a string, and a string is basically text that contains letters, numbers, different characters. Okay, so a string could be a word, it could be a sentence, it could be a single letter, a single character, but that's a string. Okay, and string is the first data type that we'll look at. Other data types in C# include integers, which are whole numbers, floats, which are numbers with a decimal place, and booleans as well, which are true or false variables, and so on. We'll look at those in another tutorial. Okay, so this is going to display a little message that says hello world. So if we click on this little play or run button, it will actually run the program, and there you go. It says hello world. So it loads the console and says hello world, and then press any key to continue. Now that's basically what it does. It says hello world, and then the program quits. That's the end of it. And if you press any key, it will say process completed. All right, so That's basically your first program in C Sharp. You can change what it says in there. All right, so you could say, hello, this is my first C Sharp app. And then you could click on run again, and it says that now. Okay. All right. And if there were any problems, if there are any errors, it would let you know before it runs, and it won't let it run if there's any major errors. Okay, what we can do now is we could say console.readLine and open bracket, close bracket, and that line with a semicolon. And what this will do is basically, so this program will load, it will run the main method, and inside that method it's going to write a line to the console that says, hello, this is my first C# app, and then it's going to go to this statement, and it's saying console.readline, so it's going to wait until the user enters something. So it's going to wait for the user to enter something and read that line. So what we need to do is save this, so File, Save, or Command S, or Control S if you're on a PC. Click on Run. And now you'll see it says, hello, this is my first C# app, and then it doesn't do anything else after that. Okay, so it doesn't say press any key to continue. But now if I press a key, now the program quits, it ends, and it says press any key to continue. Okay, so what was actually going on there was it was saying, hello, this is my first C# app, and then it was waiting for user input. It was waiting until the user entered something before it actually continued with the rest of the program. And the rest of the program was basically nothing. There's nothing after that, so it just quit. Okay, so that's basically the structure of a C# code, and that's basically the first program in C#. One last thing I'll mention in this tutorial is comments. So you can use 2 characters to add comments to your code, and any text on a line after those 2 forward slashes won't be treated as code. So they're comments in your code, and comments are really useful. They can contain notes about what is happening in the code, and they can help others understand your algorithm. So for example, you might add a comment here saying this displays a message in console. This waits for, or this waits until the user enters something. Okay, and you might also add comments to your code to explain like who the author is, when the code was written, what changes have been made, that kind of thing, or what the purpose of this file is. So you can add different comments to your code just to explain what's going on. All right, that's all for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at variables and a little bit more strings, and yeah, and then we'll move on from there. All right, thanks for watching.